Okay. We will entertain questions from the press, if anyone has any. I know that there are people back there from the press. Yes?
What's the most important thing you want to remedy? Is it land, range for these horses? Is that the best solution for their longevity?
RT, do you want to answer that question? Anybody? Laura?
Sure.
Laura?
Your question, if I understand it, is what would be the priority for the longevity of these horses?
Right.
And the answer to that is currently management practices are creating genetic bankruptcy on the range. And the way they're managing these horses, they're not going to survive. So it's a multi-pronged issue in that range actually needs to be managed, not exploited. And the horses themselves need to be managed and not exploited. And so what we have is we have basically a consumption of public land without thought for the future, if that answers the question.
I might add that Laura opened the door to genetic viability, and that's one of the things I've been hammering on for the past 12 or 13 years. Most of the herds in the West are underpopulated. So when you hear overpopulated, you know that's a lie. Approximately 80% of the herds are not genetically viable. In other words, they're not large enough to sustain themselves into the future. And so it's a huge problem, and I think that we need to demand that the herds are managed to be self-sustaining so they truly will live into the future. Of course, at the current rate, they're all being removed, so the managing to extinction is happening almost as we speak. Okay.
For the benefit of the hundreds of thousands of people who are collectively hearing this or seeing this or reading this at home, who know maybe a little bit about this issue or know nothing about this issue, could you, as succinctly as possible, sort of summarize what this is all about, what the wild horses and burros are, why they're being rounded up, and what your opposition is to it?
Anybody want?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, Madeleine?
Yeah, pretty simple. 100 years ago,
100 years ago,
there were 2 million horses roaming the plains. Today, we're under 30,000. I think that's close to extinction. Because, as Ginger says, it's the viability of the herds. You've got horses running around, but they aren't viable anymore. And I think that's very predictable, probably, on the land, that I purchased for this eco-sanctuary. The thing with it is, Americans don't know about their history. They're not familiar with their culture anymore. I remember when my daughter was in school, and we did a chapter on Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea, and I loved it because I came from another land. We turned the page, and we went on to another subject. And I said, how wonderful it is in America that you have this incredible history with cowboys and Indians. And I realized people from overseas have such an incredible perception of America. And it's one of the reasons that I came here. You have a beautiful history. Our horses are a huge part of this. They connected the rivers, the Missouri and the Columbia River. Without the horses, this could have never been done. We would have gone by ship all the way down, south and up again. But remember who we are. This is America. There was a culture here long before the white man got here. And the horse was here millions of years ago. Maybe it left for a while, but it is indigenous to America. And if it only came back 500 years ago, it was long before the white man. So let's treasure what we have. And it's time to stop the fighting. It's time for the BLM and for us all to climb together, for the cattlemen to realize times do change, and we can adjust all of this. And they can be happy, they can have their land, but nobody ever represented the horses when they started to put this program together. They were left out, and I think the director now understands that, and he realizes we need to amend these management levels. and get the horse back. I mean, if you've got ATV people in, you know, with motorbikes, and they have a say in public lands, the horses need a say.
I don't know that really addressed your question. Just as a
version. Somebody knows nothing about this thing.
I only speak in soundbite, so maybe it'll work. In 1971, the Wild Horse and Burro Act was passed, like no other act in this history, unanimously. That act has never been implemented towards the intent, and that intent was the American people spoke and said this horse is important to us. The implementation of that act was put in the hands of the BLM, which is basically a land grab machine, and a machine for the exploitation of public land, supposedly towards the benefit of the American people. That mistake has created a situation where horses are in, our wild horses, our resource, are in as dire straits as they were when that act was passed in 1971. The intent of law needs to be followed, and it has not been followed for the last 40 years. In a nutshell, that's the problem.
How was that one?
That was good.
Yes.
If you don't do the roundups, how would you remedy overpopulation, or do you not feel that there would be overpopulation of the burros or the horses?
Okay, Ricky.
In a nutshell, with very little passion, we don't believe there is overpopulation. We'll give you some recent history which just occurred at Antelope. The BLM assumed or said that there were approximately 2,800 horses on 1.3 million acres. That was too much. They were going to take out 2,000 horses and leave approximately, the numbers changed, between 500 and 8,000 horses. We were there. They stopped at 1,400 horses. Know why? They ran out. And every one of those horses that we witnessed and documented with film and with pictures was healthy, with no health issues or problems, even the old ones. And this was to be a selective roundup. In other words, the BLM was only going to take so many and let other ones free. On the last day, you know what they released? They released 20 mature, pregnant PZP mares with 2 studs. In other words, they won't have babies. And before that, they released 9 studs. And we watched them destroy families. They targeted the contractors. They targeted the pregnant mares and the foals, and the stallions ran off. They killed 9. What's out there? What's left? Virtually nothing. So we do not buy or believe there's an overpopulation issue until we can stop the roundups and get an accurate assessment as to what the numbers actually are.
Any other members of the press like to ask a question? Okay, we'll open it up to questions from the public. Elise?
Yeah, can you tell us how many, RT, maybe you want to do this, or how many cows and sheep are out there for every horse? If there's an overpopulation, how come there's so many cows and sheep? I think the public needs to hear those numbers.
Well, I can kind of respond to that. There are an estimated 2 to 3 million head of livestock on public lands. And there are approximately 100 cows to every horse. And yet the BLM refers to wild horse overpopulation. It is a sham and a shame. I believe that the BLM's new initiative for fundamental change has to address the fairness issue. You know, wild horses and burros are supposed to be managed principally on their ranges for them. I don't know what principally means to you, but principally does not mean 100 cows to 1 wild horse on their designated range to me.